Welcome to the Epic Success Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Shannon Irvin. All right, it's Monday when we're recording this, and I'm so happy to start my Monday this way because my dear friend Christy Wright is back on the podcast, and we were having dinner with some friends not too long ago and just chatting about how things have really shifted in the marketplace and how she's really focusing in specifically on speaking. And I'm going to let her talk about that. But Christy, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad to have you back with my people.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. I'm so grateful for your friendship and grateful we get to do stuff like this. So thanks for having me.
It's awesome. It's awesome. So you have been in the online space with entrepreneurs, with coaches, with consultants for a lot of time now. And so you've seen some trends, right? You've seen, especially in these last 3 years, things shift a lot. I would love for you to talk about a little bit about what you've seen, because I think sometimes entrepreneurs, we try to set it and forget it and pretend like that's going to actually continue to work tomorrow, the next day, and the next day. But things have been shifting quite rapidly, haven't they?
Yeah, it's been really interesting because even when I left Ramsey, the organization I was with for 12 years, in the fall of 21. It's hard to believe it's almost been 2 years.
Wow.
And 3 months later, I feel like God gave me a vision to train speakers. And what's interesting is, as I have built courses and began to speak on this and teach on this thing that I've been doing for a really, really long time, I've noticed this is something that, number one, is not taught, but also you have more people now than ever before that have microphones, megaphones, cameras, platforms, influence, and they don't know how. So many people that I talk to go, "Oh, I'm not a speaker." I'm like, "What, you are?" It's not just on stages. So whether you're creating a TikTok video or YouTube video, or you're a guest on someone's podcast, or you have your own podcast, or you're a coach, or you're a consultant, we have people that are creating content, teaching and leading with their words. And that's really all I'm talking about. I want to help people craft their messages and take their content and craft it in a way that is compelling so that they can make the impact they want to make, whatever that impact is, whether it is a business person that wants to lead to building their business, life change, someone weight loss, getting out of debt for a financial coach, or a preacher that wants salvations on Easter Sunday. Everyone is trying to make an impact. And I think a lot of people don't know how to make that impact. And so I just love helping people create content and craft their messages in a way that makes the impact they want to make.
And that's why I had to have you on, because everybody in my community have heard me say this, there are things in the marketing world that literally people should be put in jail for, should be put in jail for. And one of the things that is the case around is speaking and how to get your message heard in the marketplace. There's a lot of manipulation tactics, NLP tactics, all these things that aren't going to, especially in the coaching industry, we say a coaching ask is an intimate ask. And yet we're using marketing strategies to build our coaching and to build our messaging online. And the one thing I adore about you for the years that we've known each other is just the authentic, the human way that you teach, right? The way that we can be authentic, we can be true to our voice, not have to pretend to be somebody else, and really get a message out that matters. What do you see is the difference really between somebody that their message gets heard and their message just gets lost in the noise?
Well, you're the brain expert here, Shannon. Okay. So I feel like you could actually explain why this works. Okay. I'll say what works and you tell me why it works, because you know the science of it. But the reality is, there you go. The reality is, a lot of people that are experts in their content, they think that they just need to deliver their content. So let's use something really simple, like a financial coach. They're like, get out of debt, save your money, invest, live on a budget. They just drill the person with the content, but the person can't receive it, doesn't care, doesn't lead to life change. They're not compelled. They're not bought in. And so they walk out of the room of hearing that speaker and they do exactly 0 things different. It did not lead to any life change. And so what I teach, which is a very basic story arc in terms of crafting a message, which works for an hour-long keynote, it works for a workshop, it works for a 60-second reel. This story arc is the way that our brain understands information. It's the most compelling way to communicate. But the piece of it that most content creators miss is spending time unpacking the problem.
Yeah.
The problem that you're going to solve through your content, your business, your services, your solution, whatever. And so what that looks like is, instead of drilling people with how to get out of debt, and all the tactical investment information, you spend some time going, I know what it's like to be in debt. I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. I know what it's like to give my credit card to the server and be so scared they're going to come back in front of my friends and tell me that card has been declined. I know what it's like to get paid on Friday and you don't see any of that money and you feel like, what did I just work for? I know what it's like to go to the mailbox back when we used to get paper bills and be so scared that that mailbox is going to be full of bills that you can't pay. I know what that's like, that shame, that fear, that sense of defeat. I know what that's like. You spend some time talking about the problem that your audience has, whether they realize it or not. What you do is you get them to scooch a little closer on their seat. They lean in a little more. They go, yeah, I feel like that. Yeah, I feel like that. And then you transition, after you spend some time in your problem, you transition to, but it doesn't have to be that way. Or, but here's the truth of that. Or you transition to your solution and then you teach them the things. You teach them how to get out of debt. You teach them whatever your content is. So many people just drill their audiences with the content, but if they would spend a little time backing out of the content and setting up the problem that content solves, they would get more buy-in from their audience. And what's really going on, and this is what I mean by the brain stuff here, is, but because our brain is wired for survival all day, every day, it's scanning our environment, filtering things out through the lens of, why do I care? What's in it for me? Think about social media. We scroll social media. The things that we stop at are things that do something for us. They answer that question, what's in it for me? And we scroll past things that don't. So your job as a content creator is to set up and talk about and connect with your audience on the problem you're about to solve, to get buy-in, to make it more compelling. This also builds trust, empathy, credibility, relatability, engagement, interest. Spend some time there. And then people are more willing to receive and act on the solution that you have to offer.
Okay, when you were saying that, like this is very rare that I get goosies from head to toe over a strategy, but this is literally what I've been shouting from the rooftops inside of my coaching certification. We have something that we offer them right in the very, very beginning, because I don't believe in broke coaches, and I know you don't either. So, and we give them my coach launch formula, and a core component of that is being live, and we literally start with developing that problem. And it always reminds me of, because we do ministry as well. We talked about that. We have a charity in Uganda. I've been working there for 19 years, and hungry, like the kids there, we share Jesus with them. But if they're starving, if they can't see straight, if there's something wrong with them medically, they can't hear. So it's the starving, ears can't hear. And it's the same principle is across your perfect client, whoever that is. If they're in pain, which they are, if they're listening and they're trying to find a solution, and you're not meeting them right where they are and say, I know that. Like, I've not been in that situation. And I was like, feel that, like I felt it. And so this is what I mean about Christy being leading with love first, or being human, is that's like a high active service to slow down and not just try to sell to somebody, but to say, like, what are you experiencing? What are you going through? What are you feeling? What keeps you up at night? And meet them there. I mean, that certainly in the brain opens up the trust loop, right? Because there is that negativity bias, and we're like, what are you doing? Like, we're trying right. And as soon as you're doing that, and like you said, they lean in, that's that open place in the mind where your mind's saying, okay, this is a safe person.
That's right. And it's interesting too, because the trust that is built in this part of your message is so key to everything else working. So if you think about it, you're asking your audience, most likely, regardless of your content, you're asking them to do something, change their life, change their habits, their behavior. You're changing the grooves in their brain that they're very used to thinking this way, acting this way. That's a big ask, Shannon, in a 30-minute keynote or a 45-minute keynote. That's a big ask. So you've got to spend some time with them and compel them and craft your message in a way that is the highest likelihood of transformation, the highest likelihood that they're going to actually walk out of there and do something about what you said. So we didn't just spend an hour go, that was a good speaker, but they're actually going to manage their money different, manage their business different, manage their life different, do their parenting different. So what that means is you're going to craft your message in a way that is the most compelling, that builds that trust, because someone is not going to act on a speaker that they don't trust. If you get up there and you start rattling off all your parenting statistics, that audience, that mom that's exhausted, she's so tired, she cannot even see straight. She's going to sit there and go, you don't know. You don't know what my days are like. You don't know how much I get screamed at. You don't know how tired I am. You don't know. So if you don't make the connection, and here's the important thing I want to call out, it doesn't have to be specific to the same scenario. You could just talk about pain around money. Your audience might feel a totally different pain around money, but they're going to feel a connection to you in the pain that they have hurt before. So now I can trust them because they know what it's like to be me. And what's interesting is when that audience walks out of the room, they're going to think they get me. They know me. And they're also going to think, I felt like you were talking directly to me. And it's because you were. You took the time to understand them and craft a message that speaks to them right where they are. And that trust, man, you can't measure it. It makes all the difference in the audience actually acting on what you're saying.
Oh my gosh. And I just see so clearly this juxtaposition of especially when somebody's new online or new in business, and there's this energy around, I need to prove that I'm worthy. So they're throwing all these facts. And we know from the brain science of any kind of transformation, any kind of decision toward a change, anything like that, it's 80% emotional neurochemical.
Absolutely.
Not
Absolutely.
logical. But what do we do when we get started? I'm going to prove that I am good enough for you to buy from, all logical. That's why it feels like it lands so cold or so sterile.
That's right.
And it's not who you are. Like, you're not a cold, sterile person, but when we're in that proving energy, it comes across to the brain as like a threat. Like,
that's right.
I'm not sure. So where do we go after we've like really done a good job developing that part of the story?
So after you spend some time on the problem, obviously you don't want to leave them there. You don't want to leave them in the problem in the pit. You would transition out of that, and the transition statement might look something like, but it doesn't have to be that way. Maybe if your problem is like the lies we believe, and maybe you could do a talk on that, Shannon, on the lies that you got to prove yourself. And you spend time like, oh, I gotta put on my best makeup and my best outfit. And you got to, you put on your game face and your little, like, am I going to get found out? But I don't know. I just got to, fake it till you make it. You build up. So like, you know what the truth is? The truth is that authenticity compels people. The truth is that people change people, real people change people. And you change your tone and you change your pacing and you drop that truth line. Maybe it's a myth that you're going to give a truth, or a problem that you're going to give a solution, or, a despair that you're going to give hope. And then you bring them into your solution, and this is really important for people. When you're giving a message, any type of message, so this could be a keynote, a podcast, Instagram reel, it could be an SEO article, it could be a blog, but whatever. It needs to be able to be summarized under one main idea. So that means that if I ask you, what does that talk about? You should be able to tell me in one sentence, sentence, not a paragraph, not 45 minutes explaining it, not talking circles around it. I need you to tell me in one sentence, what is the one main idea of that message? And here's why. Your audience, especially in audio format, when they're just listening to you, cannot remember 15 things. They can't even remember 5 things. They can remember one thing. And so you want to boil your whole message down to one main idea. But what's beautiful about this is once you decide what that is, what your thesis statement is, it anchors your whole talk. And so then everything else about your talk becomes easier because your problem sets up that, your solution unpacks it, your action applies it. Every other section points to this one main idea. So if you said to me, Shannon, if you said, Christy, what's the thesis statement of your fear talk? Do it scared. What's your thesis statement of your life balance talk? Life balance is living from your values. Or the newer version, because that was 10 years ago, the newer version, life balance is doing the right things at the right time. Kind of evolved, but it's still one main idea that everything points to. And so when you have that, it gives clarity to the rest of your message. But here's what's most important. Your audience walks out of the room. and they say to their friend, oh my gosh, I just heard Shannon speak and she was so amazing. And the friend says, what did she speak on?
Exactly.
That person says, she said this.
Yeah.
Because you drill it home over and over again, where let's just go ahead and acknowledge, if you don't know what your one main idea is, your audience doesn't know. And if your audience doesn't know, they can't act on it.
Yeah.
So if you want them to change their life and act on that thing you spent 45 minutes talking about, that they may or may not have taken notes on or had a workbook or whatever, they have to be able to remember it, to do something about it. So your job is to drill it home so much so that when they walk out of there, they know exactly what it is and they can act on it. And I to give full credit here, this concept I've pulled in the last 12, 13 years of speaking, I pull from best practices I've learned from people. This concept, I totally learned from Andy Stanley in his book, Communicating for a Change. He drills home the one main idea. And when I read that book 10 years ago, it completely changed how I write talks, where now everything has one main idea and everything else points to it.
So do you always start with the thesis or the main idea and then go backwards and forwards from that?
Yes, there's one exception to this though. I would say for new speakers and new content creators, that's the best way to do it, because you know you and your content better than you know anything else. If you have someone that is listening right now that is a seasoned speaker and they are very versatile in a lot of subjects and they are used to writing lots of talks to lots of different audiences, you might start with the audience's problem, where you get booked for an event and it's a business event. You go to the client and they say, we really want you to speak on this subject, and it's marketing. And you say, okay, tell me about your audience. What do they struggle with marketing? They say, well, they don't know. They don't understand marketing. They don't understand. So then you go back and you write a talk. Your one main idea is this solution to their problem, and you create it in reverse. But I would say that is more difficult to do, and that would be for seasoned speakers.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just full disclosure. I always like to share truth about growing our businesses versus the B or the highlight reel.
Right.
Literally every mistake she just talked about, I've done. Like
same. That's how I learned, Shannon. That's how I learned.
Like, I think in like 3 paragraphs. And then like my copywriters know, we sit and work. I'm like, okay, just let me get the paragraphs out and we'll get to the hook, right?
We'll get there eventually.
Yeah. And we literally just did this the other day. They're used to working with me. And I'm like, Lord, couldn't you just maybe the one that I'm like, I see the one line and I go, and he's like, yeah, no, I give you paragraphs. That's your work is to distill them.
But that's normal. But that's so normal. And I just want to normalize that for your listeners that feel like that, because the reality is sometimes we have to circle an issue to get to the heart of it. And I think it was Albert Einstein that said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And so we need to spend the time and do the work to understand our own content and our core messages well enough to be able to come up with that one line to deliver it to our audience. So everyone is like you. We talk around things to get there, and that's a perfectly normal exercise. I do the exact same thing. It takes time. With the fear talk, I didn't wake up and go, do it scared. No, I was like, don't stay stuck. No, fear is a liar. No, it's not okay for you to stay stuck, because then you're keeping you. I would circle, copyright, brainstorm, whiteboard. And then you go, do it scared. And you're like, that's it.
Yeah. It it almost appears, right? If you're doing
when you spend time with it. That's right.
Oh, so good. So good. You just saved people like years right there. That one thing. Okay. So we know the pain. We've talked about it. We have that one thesis idea. How do we weave that through the next stages?
So you really want to spend time unpacking the solution and unpacking the thesis statement, which is your solution. This is your core content. You need to sell them on the idea before you tell them what to do about it, because you can't just say fear is do it scared and then move on, because they need to understand like why. And then you tell stories around doing it scared, and you tell other success stories of people doing it scared. And you really, sell sounds like such a bad word, but you're influencing them. They've got to get bought into this solution before you move on, because they're not going to act on it if they don't believe you. And one sentence isn't enough. You need to have one sentence, but then you need to give examples and antidotes. And if you want to put in some research there to back up what you're saying, by all means, especially in certain industries, that will be really important. Sometimes I will give keynotes, and I work in, content around phones and technology. And I don't hate phones or technology, but it applies to life balance and what we're talking about. But I will then support it with do you know the average iPhone user touches their phone 2,617 times a day?
Everybody's like this.
Right? Everybody goes, oh, I feel that. So now the
Yeah.
story has compelled me, but the research backs up what I'm saying. So you're always building this out. So this is where you're fleshing out your talk and building out the solution section. But then after that, again, we're following a story arc. So here's what's happening with your audience. In the problem section, they're on the edge of their seat. They're kind of getting, their shoulders are down. They're like, oh man, that's so true, man. I am in debt, or I am blah, 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 whatever. But then you pull them out of that and you say, but it doesn't have to be this way. And they're like, okay, well, I want that, whatever the solution is, I want that, right? So you sell them on the idea. They're like, I want that. The next logical question is what? How do I do that?
Yeah.
How do I do it scared? How do I have life balance? How do I build my business? How do I get out of it? How? Then you just move into the action section of your talk and you give them steps. 1, 3, or 5 are good numbers. Don't give more than 5. The shorter the talk, the less you can give. 4 is okay. It's less memorable. And the thing that I would say about this is these cannot be new ideas. These are only ideas that support the main idea. This is how you do the main idea. So in my life balance talk, the thesis of that is, or the problem, let me just walk you through the framework.
Okay.
The problem of my life balance talk is we don't know what life balance is, much less how to achieve it.
Yeah.
What is life balance? I don't know. I don't even know. It's a moving target. So it just,
something I don't have.
something, that's right. We don't know what it is, but we're sure we don't have it. That's exactly what I say. So that's what the problem is. The solution is life balance is doing the right things at the right time. Okay. How do I do that? Here's my 5 steps. Figure out what matters. Stop doing what doesn't matter. Create a calendar that reflects what matters. Protect what matters and be present for what matters. All 5 of those teach you how to do the right things at the right time. They are not new ideas. It's not also get a nanny, get a house cleaner. Also, here's how no. Here's how to manage your calendar. No. They're very simple, clear ideas that only reinforce the main idea. And the temptation always is for speakers to just squeeze in a bunch of new ideas, but you'll lose them. I'm telling you, you will lose them. At this point, you're only applying what the one main idea is. And the reality is they probably won't remember most of them. They probably won't. They might remember one, but if they remember one, then they're taking some action on the big main idea, which is doing the right things at the right time that you compelled them and worked so hard to. So you're just teaching them how to apply. And I think what this is such a difficult aspect for content creators, because what they think is, well, I don't want to insult them. Well, don't they know how to apply it? Well, I mean, like I'm going to offend them by telling them what to do. No. Your audience is tired. They're overwhelmed. They do not know your content like you do. And when you connect the dots for them, it's this incredible gift to them because you're taking the thinking out of it. What a gift. So even if the steps are so basic, set up a Facebook page. Go to facebook.com and create a profile. Step 2, create a business page. Okay. I'll give you a great example. So my new course is called Start Getting Booked. And this is helping people get booked and paid as a speaker. The steps I'm describing for you inside the course are create a landing page for you as a speaker, put your bio and put a form to request you as a speaker. Even in the course, I say, I know this is not rocket science, but here's the reality. You don't have it, do you?
Most people don't.
You don't have a landing, right? They don't. And so when you connect the dots for them, when you connect your content to the application in their real life, it is not insulting. It is a gift to them because you are holding them by the hand and walking them through how to do the thing that you're teaching them to do. And so this is where the action comes into play, and you're just going to teach them how to apply your core content.
So powerful and so clear for the listener. So like you've given them like problem and there's a solution, and I'm going to break down the solution. And it doesn't require, especially in like one thing that I see, a mistake I see a lot is people will get to that information level or action level, and they'll start like putting on scuba gear, right? They're like going 70 miles deep and giving them 100 different steps that should be after the purchase, not in a speech. So how do you have any hacks or tricks to kind of be looking at those top 3 or 5 ideas and weed out the extra stuff that should be after the purchase?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I do. That's just a really simple formula. I love giving formulas and frameworks because it takes the thinking out of it. And like, if you do what we're talking about, literally you can't screw it up. So let's say that in my 5 steps, which you have to have a pretty long keynote for 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Typically I'd say 3. If it's short, it's 1. And I'll explain in a minute how this works on social media. It works for any length of speaking or communicating or content creation. So a good formula when you're in the act is you've got your headers. So let's say that it's the 5, figure out what matters, stop doing what doesn't matter, and so on. The formula within each of those 5 is story and point. That's it. Story and point. So figure out what matters. Here's my story that I would give on stage whenever I give this talk. Figure out what matters. I tell this story about how my husband and I are outdoorsy and we love going to the sporting goods store and like getting, new gear, like getting a kayak for the summer or getting some new adventure type stuff, whatever. But there's this one particular store in town and it's a chain. Like, I got to tell you guys, every time we go to the store, like it's a terrible experience. Like, I don't want to bash them in case maybe you've been there. So like, I'll make up a different name. Let's just call it like Mix Sporting Goods. Okay. So you just like a little bit of sarcasm in there. Y'all, every time I go there, you've got teenagers throwing footballs, organizing socks, playing with the golf, and you got to line out the building with people in there with money in their hand trying to buy a thing. And like, you're looking at this and you're going, how can you guys not know what matters? Like, is throwing the football more important than the customers with money in their hand? No, you know this in your business. What about in your life? Figure out what matters. What's important to you in your life? Story and a point. Unpack the concept of figure out what matters and then move on. So step 1 is figure out what matters. You can't spend your life on what matters if you don't know what it is. Figure out what matters. Step 2, stop doing what doesn't matter. And then I hang on, I got a phone call real quick. Hang on. No, sorry, I'll be right back. Yeah. No, it's not important. No, I'm just on sick. No big. No. We spend a lot of time on things that don't matter.
So good. Yeah.
And it takes away time for story and a point or illustration and a point. That's it. So I'm not unpacking. I'm not going scuba deep on these concepts. I'm just going to say what it is, figure out what matters. That's the header. Give you a story that entertains you. And you're like, where's she going with this Mixed Sporting Goods? And then pull it back into reinforcing the point. Here's why you've got to figure out what matters. And then you move on to step 2. So story and point. That's a great formula for you to hit on the concept, compel the concept without getting in the weeds on the concept.
One of the things I was telling a mutual friend of ours over the weekend of like how you're just like, I love listening to your stories. We were at Jennifer Allwood's event, we were all speaking, and she got up and spoke. I'm like, you were just a master at crafting stories.
Thank you.
From like the heart, not like, you know, and I know you've got something that people can kind of dive deeper with and really help with that. But like on a high level, I just would love to get into your brain a little bit when you're thinking about a new story. Yeah. How do you kind of reverse engineer these stories that like literally I didn't even realize it, and I'm like and I'm like, dang, she did it again. Like, it's so good.
Okay, well, thank you for saying that. Okay, one thing I want to say about this story arc though that we're saying, is this isn't just for a 45-minute keynote on a stage. This works for anything. So if someone goes to, let me pull it up, and I'm just going to give you an example. I'm going to pull it up on my phone. If someone goes to my Instagram page, and you look at any reel I've ever done. Okay. Any reel I've ever done, it follows problem, solution, action. So like one of my more recent one is, this is a couple days ago. It's like, I've even got some from the most like, here's why parenting's so hard, because you feel like that if you could just do the right amount of the right things, then it wouldn't be hard. If I just do the right amount of this and the right amount of that, then maybe cause if it's hard, maybe I'm doing something wrong. That's not true. It is hard no matter what you do. So you find grace for yourself. So problem, here's why parenting's so hard. The solution, the truth is it is hard no matter what. The action is have grace for yourself, whatever. More recent one was, let me tell you something. When God's doing something in your life, it's going to be harder than you think, take longer than you think, and cost you more than you think. Okay, that's hard. It's hard, isn't it? Oh yeah, it is. Man, he's taking forever. This sucks. Solution is, here's why you need to know that. Because when it's harder than you think, takes longer than you think, and costs more than you think, you don't have to doubt him. He's still doing the thing. This is just who God is. He works like that's the solution. He just works like that. So we can still trust him because he's doing the thing. Problem, solution, action. So this framework works
so good
in a 60-second reel. It works in an Instagram caption. It works in anything. So don't feel like this is just for stage talks. This is for anything. Okay. So storytelling this is so important to me. Now the talk format we're talking about follows a basic story arc. That is how our brain, really consumes information. But within a talk or within a message, especially a longer talk, you're going to have micro stories. You're going to have the Dick's Sporting Goods, the phones, my son climbing out of his crib, which is a whole nother ridiculous story.
That's hilarious.
These micro stories bring it to life and make it dynamic and interesting. So because this is so important, I do my course is 6 modules. I do an entire lesson just on storytelling, just to reiterate how important this is. But here's the most important takeaway for audience for today. Relive the story. Yeah. You're not talking at someone, you're reliving it with them. So what that means is you're going to tell the story as if you're experiencing it the first time yourself, because they're experiencing it the first time. So let me give you an example. I tell this story about how I was in this running group and there was this guy and he was interested in me, and like, y'all, he just kept pursuing me and kept asking me out. And I was like, no, and I'm very flattered, but I'm not interested. And this went on for months and months. Like my friends were telling me, like, Christy, you're leading him on. I was like, I'm not leading him on. Like I told him 100 times. Like, so finally, after 7 months of this guy asked me to go to coffee, and like, I know the point of coffee, right? Like he's going to ask me to coffee to like lay it on the line, like pursue me. Like he's going to tell me his intentions. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm just going to make it really super clear. Nothing's ever going to happen. So we go to coffee as expected. He lays on the line. He's like, I really like you. I really want to pursue you. Even though I was dating someone else, this guy would not give up.
Wow.
And I was like, listen, I'm flattered. Like, seriously, I really am. But I need you to know that nothing is ever going to happen. Like cue Taylor Swift, we are never, ever getting together ever. I was like, in fact, I'm positive I'm going to marry someone else. Now, if you were to ask that guy how he felt leaving coffee that day, he would say, I felt great about it. I knew it was going to happen. And if you want to, you can, because that man is now my husband.
I know. I was trying to like make it a facial expression.
You have to tell the story.
Wow.
I didn't say my husband took me to coffee and laid it on the line. And I first told him I wasn't interested, but then I was, and now ta-da, we're married. No. There was a guy in my running group.
Yeah.
You have to tell the story as if you're experiencing the first time yourself, where I didn't know he was my husband when I went to coffee that day. When I was at the lake house, there was a killer outside. I didn't know it was the storms that knocked the power out. There was a killer. And I'm running around grabbing my butcher knife for the killer that's outside. There was no killer. It was the storms. You have to tell the story as if you're experiencing the first time yourself, because you're taking the audience on a journey with you. And what's so fascinating, there's great research in a book I love called Talk Like Ted by Carmine Gallo. And he talks about the brain science of storytelling and how when you tell a story, you are actually the parts of your brains that are your brain that is activated. It lights up the exact same part of your listener's brain where you can hack into their brain for good, not for evil, where you're taking them on this journey and they literally feel what you feel when you feel it. Yeah. And what's so beautiful about that is you are engaging them in a way that is way more effective than flat information or graphs or charts could ever do. It's storytelling is what really connects with people.
Yeah, it's something that people miss. I missed it for sure in the beginning too, especially with how the things that I teach. And if you think about it, like music is that way. Mm-hmm. It does the same exact thing. That's why we get so connected. And
that's right.
Feel the artist, like, and I believe what we do, not putting musicians down, but what we do, it can have that same effect and
absolutely
really somebody to a new place.
Well, and it's tempting when you're creating content and you're short on time, which we all are because we have so much to say. Yeah. It's tempting to cut the fluff. Yeah. If you're tight on time, cut the fluff. No. The stories are not fluff. Mm-hmm. The stories are what make everything else matter. So I would rather you have less information and have stories that set that up than to have all the information crammed in that no one actually hears or receives. In fact, I quote a Talk Like Ted by Carmine Gallo. He said, Brian Stevenson, who at the time of the writing had received the longest standing ovation in TED history for TED Talks, longest standing ovation, spent 65% of his time telling stories. And he got what, 12 minutes, 18 minutes? It's not like he had all this time to spare. 60, and it's stories. If people could just have the confidence to put away all their information and all their professor, I got to prove myself like you talk about, and just tell stories, you will make more of an impact than anybody else at that event or in that platform. It's really the storytelling that makes the connection.
That's like $1 million piece of advice right there.
If they would do it, but just you have to do it.
Please. All right. So the arc, how do we land? How do we wrap up the speech that we're doing, whether it's a Facebook Live, all my coaches out there doing Coach Lunch Formula or a stage? how do we move people from the steps to maybe the wrap up or that kind of thing?
Yeah. So if you are pitching in this message, whether that is on, again, social media, on a stage, on whatever, if you're pitching, you want to pitch your lead magnet, your offer, your next step, your call to action. You want to pitch at the most logical place. Yeah. So if the most logical place is the end, that's great. Because if you're talking about something else and the lead magnet is a little bit different, then it makes sense for that to be the call to action at the end. But if it applies to something you're saying in the middle, then pitch in the middle. So, when I was leading Business Boutique, we had a tool called the Profit Potential tool. And it was where people could plug in the numbers of their business and see, what their profitability would be. Well, I did an entire stage talk on knowing the numbers in your business, managing the money in your business. And so that made sense to pitch in the middle of the talk. So I was like, you need to know the numbers. You need to know the numbers. They're like, and in fact, I've got a new resource for you guys. It's a tool that's going to show you. So just pull out your phone right now and text, profit potential, whatever, to this number, and you'll get it. And so it didn't even feel like a pitch. It felt like a give because it's a logical place. So you would do that in the middle. I prefer pitches to be in the middle. Yeah. It feels less salesy, and then you can end on a more emotional note. So when you can, if you're not pitching at the end on a closing story, and the closing story should be an illustration that success is possible. And so it's a testimony of how someone did the thing you're teaching. It's an example of how you did the thing you're teaching. It highlights, and it could be from a book, it could be from an article, it doesn't have to be yours, but it highlights the illustration that whatever you just said is possible. And so it really ends on that heartfelt, warming, hopeful note. And again, ends on story, which people will remember your beginning, your end, and your stories more than anything else. So end on a strong note, and stories are the stronger note.
Oh my gosh, this is like a masterclass. I think I'm literally going to call this title of this masterclass with Christy Wright. So I know that you have a resource that people can go deeper. And listen, I want especially my students. In fact, I think I'm going to make it mandatory because it's a big part of our certification is getting coaches clients, right? And
yeah.
They've got to be able to speak well to do that. But I know you have a new resource that you were talking about over dinner that night, something that you've put together. So I'd love for you to share that because my people need it.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to be signing up for it too.
Well, it's so fun because one of the things that I think you're really good at, Shannon, and I love to do this too, and this is where we talked about this in the action section. You take the thinking out of it. That is a gift to your clients when you take the thinking out and you just literally say, like, do exactly this. This is what will work, which is why I have a talk formula and so on. So I created a bunch of templates to help people start a speaking business. So this is actually what I pulled out of the workbook from my Start Getting Booked course to help people get booked as speakers. So this is a template for your landing page. What goes on your landing page? What goes in your bio? It's a template for your pre-event call where you have a conversation with the client, say, tell me about your audience. What is your budget? What is your objective of this event, where you get to know them? It's got a template for something called an advancement form, which in the event world, an advancement form is just how the event progresses. So flights, travel, book signings, anything you need to know or prepare for, from headshots to preparations to what they want you to say in your talk or not say in your talk, all that goes in that form. So I created all these templates just to hand to people. If you want to copy and paste, it's going to get your speaking business off the ground. So you can go to christywright.com/starter kit and you'll get the speaking business starter kit. And you can literally plug those in and start to create your own speaking business so that you can get booked as a speaker.
I love it. And this is something that we talk about in our community, the Proverbs 31 principle, which is having multiple streams.
Yeah.
So that you're always, I believe it's honoring God when you're using all of the capacity that you have. So if you are a coach or you're an entrepreneur, course creator, service provider, you should be speaking like that. That is it. Number one, I do polls, sometimes informal, very formal on some levels. How did you hear from me? How did you hear about me? These are people who are coming in and spending $18,000 to get certified. Yeah. 99% of them heard me on some level of a stage.
Well, it's how you talk, like, you have to talk about your business.
Yeah.
What better way to talk about it than in a format where, and it doesn't have to be on stage. It could be webinar, podcast interview. It could be a YouTube channel, but what better format than when you have 20, 30, 45 minutes to build a relationship with these people that are qualified people that are at an event or tuned in or plugged in listening to this podcast, then through this type of speaking. And again, I know what your audience, they're going, but I'm not a speaker. That's fine.
Yeah, that's what
You're a
I said.
content creator. You're a
Yeah.
content creator. And so you're creating content that's going to help people get served through your business. So it's just another avenue of marketing. And I love how you clarified that, because it's not just for professional speakers. It's really anyone trying to get their message out. And this is a great way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we really encourage our people to do the Russell Brunson top 100. He didn't originate it with more Jim Rohn, but the idea of like wanting to be able to serve other people's audiences, you've got to have that whole thing kind of set up so that it's just a give and go. Like, here's how I can serve, and you're not frantically looking around for all the pieces and the parts, and you can just go and serve and tap into the law of sowing and reaping.
When your audience knows that people buy from those they know, like, and trust, and speaking, telling your story, making them laugh, telling a joke, adding value, their problems, that's all that does. It gets them to know you, like you, and trust you. And at the end, if you have a book or you have a course or you have, something, they're like, oh my gosh, I love that guy. I love that girl. Oh my gosh, she helped me so much. They naturally want to continue to work with you. And so it's a great way for you to build your business and be able to do that.
I love it. All right. We'll put the link down in the show notes. And of course, we'll link up all the ways to follow Christy. You got it. Like, her stories give me life. Like, seriously, I'm like, is she doing a story today? It gives me life. Thank you, Christy, for being on the podcast. I just adore you, my friend. And I can't wait to see you on your next stage.
You're amazing. Thanks so much, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
Bye. All right. So you heard it from Christy. She's amazing. The resources down below. And I just want to encourage you. It's important that you get your message out. It's important that, you've heard me say a lot, your vibe attracts your tribe. And this story arc is a powerful way for your tribe to be able to lean in. All right. I will see you on the next edition of the podcast. Bye for now.